what is deep dub? Deep dub. What would you like to say?
Hey guys, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Nuria and I want to thank Haris. You also, you guys are doing splendid work regarding this whole atheist movement, or whatever you want to say it, right? Because you were showing us some numbers a few minutes ago. Yeah, I wanted to talk about it, talk about it a little more, right? Because we are still in a situation where we have countries like pretty much all of Middle East and Pakistan, even India to some extent, where you're not even allowed to criticize religion, right? And that's not even the main point. The main point is how we used to think about the West 10, 20 years ago, right? It's very progressive, free speech and all of that. Actually, the West has regressed back to I don't know how to say it. I mean, I could get away saying stupid shit in UK 10 or 20 years ago about any certain religion, right? But I think it's regressed to a point where I'm not allowed to you guys know about the whole Hatun incident, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
thing, and I mean the point I'm trying to make is
So what's your question? So basically, your point is that West has regressed that you cannot criticize religions
yes,
anymore. Okay.
yes,
All right. I don't think that's true because there is a fear that it could happen, but I would say your statement would qualify or it would become true if the West starts introducing blasphemy laws. There's an Islamophobia Act, something, but again, that's
yeah, exactly. That's
listen.
a backdoor to that's a backdoor to, you can say, blasphemy. Or
Yeah,
whatever,
but it's not. No, but it's not really. It's not gonna. We haven't seen any precedents, and we haven't seen how it's been applied. I don't think it would ever be applied on let's say, apostate prophet or David Wood. That you're Islamophobic.
Yeah, but don't you think that the liberals should go back to standing up for liberal values rather than
but they're different types of liberals as well. So we're liberals as well, and there are a lot of white liberals as well. Richard Dawkins, and there are a lot of them as well. So this woke culture. I think it's a little blip though, but it's not something. It hasn't legislated yet. So once it legislates, then you would be able to say that your West has regressed. I think this is the beauty of West as well, that even radical wokes, radical leftists, and radical rightists, and all of them are just talking about. I used to hold this view. But I'm like, no, not really. It's actually not as bad as we like to make it out to be. Yes, the woke culture is there, and it's pretty toxic. And the cancel culture is a remnant of that.
My assertion is that.
But you got to keep fighting.
I'm left when it comes to most things, right? I support free speech. I support women's rights, anti-racism, and all of that. But the only reason I don't stand with the left is because of their soft corner for Islamists.
No, but we're left as well. We're left as well. So why left woke crowd hijack the title of left? Why? You say, well, we're left as well. So there's a disintegration between.
But exactly. But you guys, you or we, whatever you call it, I would say we're still a minority in the
No, we're
bigger
not.
pie.
No, there's a new term. No, we're not. There's a new term. It's called classical liberals. I don't think Joe Rogan calls himself conservative. I know that what he's going through. I don't think Sam Harris calls himself conservative, or Richard Dawkins calls himself conservative, or Michael Shermer, or there's some Bill Nye. I don't think these guys call themselves conservative. They call themselves classical liberals. They're liberals. So there is. We just tend to hang on. We just tend to latch on to the loudest ones, and we think that they're the ones running the narrative. They're not.
The mainstream, right?
No, they're not.
The mainstream.
No. Well, the intellectual dark web. I know it's called the intellectual dark web, but they are actually quite mainstream.
Okay.
Joe Rogan has more audience. Joe Rogan has got more audience than any other mainstream media.
Okay. Let me rephrase it, right? So do you think this whole Charlie Hebdo thing, right? If I talk in the context of UK and some other countries, right? Do you think the tolerance has increased for that type of content compared to 20 years ago? Or do you think that has increased? Because my assertion is that the tolerance for that type of content has decreased, which is alarming, which is...
No, I don't think so. No, the way France responded. Did you miss the memo? Did you see how France
No, but
responded?
I agree. Like if we talk about the UK, for example, I agree with you. I know what you're saying completely in the sense that like I question it myself sometimes when I'm like, okay, well, am I on the left? Because sometimes it feels like the left doesn't accept you because when you say we are a minority, I agree. Especially in the UK, when you talk about the context of Islam, I'm on the left, but I'm considered an Islamophobe by those very same woke leftists, which almost pushed me to the fringe to be like, do I consider myself more of a centrist then? How does that work in the UK? I know this comes down to a lot to do with identity politics as well, but I understand what you're saying. In the example of the UK, I do agree with you that the left
Yeah, that is
are
why I
so
specifically mentioned UK. Yeah.
sorry.
That is why I specifically mentioned UK, because
Yeah. In
it's
terms of
very
the
troubling.
UK example, I completely agree. The woke left has pushed us to the point where I know I speak out and like this is my platform here. I in no way expect the UK mainstream to kind of have or harbor my views because that's completely going against what the left are trying to portray as who
Exactly.
they
And
stand
But
up
also,
for.
Nuria,
also,
my question to Nuria, I get that, but if you expect BBC has never been or never would allow someone like us, because we are quite radical in our narrative as well, where we say just ban the burqa, for example, no hijab day, for
but you aren't
example.
saying that,
I
right? That's not your position,
no,
Yeah,
but we
and
are
it's
saying no hijab day. We are saying no hijab day.
if anything, we're the least bigoted view of that you could get.
Exactly.
Yep,
And this is
but
what I
hang
want
on.
to. Yeah.
Well, you
I
didn't let
wanted
me
to make
finish my
this point
point.
as well.
No,
So
hang
for
on.
example,
Deep up.
20.
Like, wait. I didn't.
Okay.
I'm asking Nuria a question. I'm asking a question. So BBC is not going to allow that, but BBC also doesn't. I think it's a false charge, but BBC doesn't make a case for Muslims blocking roads to pray in the name of religious freedom,
Exactly.
etc. BBC doesn't facilitate that either. So don't you think we have an unfair expectation from the mainstream media that they should
No,
just listen to us and not anyone else?
no, I'll tell you
Nuria,
why.
hang on,
I'll
I'm
tell you
asking
why.
Nuria a question. Nuria.
Okay.
No, I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation because in the name of having varied views and people coming from like the thing is we speak on so many of these issues with conviction because we're saying we can't possibly be you can't label us to be in the camp as being racist or whatever. We're from those people. We are brown, so I'm speaking to you from a valid place of experience. But they won't harbor those, they won't even highlight those views is what I'm saying. That is so few and far between when they highlight those kind of voices. And I know and the BBC have their own issues anyway. They're like not impartial in many ways. But yeah, so now when this stuff is becoming more mainstream because people are turning to different platforms to express their viewpoints, they're gonna have to let these voices come in more and more. But it's not happening at the moment. When I spoke to the UK atheists and we had a podcast, the only reason they keep trying to like have me say things as well is because they are actually scared. They're like, we can't say this because we will be branded in a second as racist and Islamophobic. But if you say it, maybe it will pass that initial barrier that's already there. So in the UK, this is just from the UK's perspective.
Yeah, but Vice has done a story. SBS has, which is a mainstream Australian media, they've done a story. The Economist has done it.
That's
Sky
fine.
News
There's
is
no
a
main
right-wing one.
English thing there. Okay, Sky News. What have they done?
Well, they also basically spoke to this guy, which actually shows that like how they're sorry that for implementing Sharia in those no-go zones, etc. So they've shamed them as well. But my only point is, I think they're trying to be. They don't have the luxury of being like us. For example, we can basically say a lot of things unfiltered. We can, and it seems like in the modern world, it's being more acceptable. As I said, Joe Rogan, who says a lot of unfiltered stuff, has bigger audience than any other mainstream media in the West. But they have to keep some sort of a balance where they have these editorial responsibilities. I think it's a far cry from saying that they are facilitating them or no, they might be facilitating.
Let me tell you a real actual thing that I think about every single day before I go to sleep. I'm like, I think about these Sunday Scoop sessions and I'm like, is that going to now jeopardize my career? Because every law firm would be like, well, you're borderline Islam or you are Islamophobic or you are, no matter how many times I say, I'm not talking about Muslims, I'm talking about Islam and I come from valid experience. I actually don't know if my career is able to reach where it could go because of the chats we have. And that's very telling of the UK at the moment, and the way
But
that
that's the
Muslims
society,
have
though.
hijacked the victim mentality to be covered by this Islamophobic shell.
But that's the
Exactly.
society, though. But that's the social point. I'm talking about the West, as in like state-sponsored.
Yeah,
What do you mean?
it is like pretty much state sponsored though. So to make my point, yeah, when was the last time you saw BBC airing a girl who is fighting against hijab? Because we see a hijabi woman coming on BBC and talking about like
All
hijab
the
rights.
time. Yes, all the time. Even yesterday, I was watching Nadia Hussein,
Yes.
the one who won
But
Bake
when
Off.
was the last time
Yeah.
you saw a Muslim woman fighting against hijab and BBC airing her story that how her family is forcing her this and that? They just won't show that, right? Because
No.
I get that. I agree with
just-
you on that, on the particular topic of hijab. I agree with
they
you.
just want to constantly victimize a particular community.
Yeah,
and-
I
Agree,
get
in the
that.
UK, that's a big problem.
No, I agree with you on the issue of hijab, yeah, because hijab is, again, it always goes down to a helpless little girl who wants to wear a hijab, and then you see the hatred, the people being pushed down the stairs for wearing hijab by these far-right white supremacists, etc. So that is a bit of a different take on that, and I agree with you that we should be allowed to speak against it as well. But they have, for some reason, they believe that. I'm just being a devil's advocate. I'm thinking from their point of view. They're thinking that, okay, that will give rise to anti-Muslim bigotry. That's the problem. But my point is, they're not actually complicit. They're not facilitating.
Yeah, but Haris,
The
they don't
radical
reflect
Islam.
the other side either. Like, what was it? Saira Khan, she left Islam. What was that? We saw it on the Daily Mail. Zayn Malik, he left
They
Islam.
talked about it, though.
It's just no.
But they did highlight it. They did
As
highlight
far as
Sarah Khan.
celebrity news goes and mainstream media goes, when David Beckham gets a new haircut, as opposed to Zayn Malik leaving Islam,
So they're
you
not
can
trying
see
to
the
normalize it
discrepancy.
another way. They're
No,
trying to
of
normalize.
course, but that is state-sponsored media, and that is
No,
a
but you
reflection
gotta
of what
no, but
they-
Nuria, but you gotta give them. They're being pro-choice here. They're saying that if a girl wants to wear a hijab, it's our responsibility to keep drumming that in their head. That okay, no, there is a lot of coercion involved in that. I think that's not. Maybe I always say that this is a temporary blip. I think this is a temporary blip. This is a unholy alliance between liberal world of the West
Exactly.
with Islamists. It's an unholy alliance. It's bound
And
to fall apart.
The funniest thing about this unholy alliance is that liberals will always support Islamists, right? Liberals will always say, "Yeah, woman, I support your right to wear hijab. I support
Yeah,
your
but
right to
I
do
think-
namaz
So
in
when the
park and
Islamists
this."
come into power, the liberals wouldn't
But-
exist.
yeah, it's
But
not- it's
yeah, but we're
even that.
not. Yeah, but
just a second,
guys,
just a
we
second.
need to be.
Will that
but we need to.
just one
but
second?
we-
Will that
Okay,
liberal
let's just
turn
finish.
around and say, "Hey, Islamist guy, are you going to back me on my advocacy for LGBTQ?" And the Islamist is going to slap him in the face that very moment. He's going to like, yeah.
Yeah, but that's
fine,
not the
dude."
point. We've made these points ourselves plenty of times. But I think lumping hijabis with Islamism, that's a mistake. That's not how they see it.
No,
We've
that's
seen
different.
plenty of LGBTQ. Haven't you seen the Pride movie, the video that went viral of Armin Navabi? I think it originally had 10 million views or something. Majority of white LGBTQ members, they were like, "Yeah, you're a brave guy for doing it." So they understand that. They just don't say it. The very reason that I wouldn't talk about the some other local Cambodian issues or Brazilian issues, etc. So they tend to stay away from it, which we perceive that as maybe they are facilitating it, but that might be the unintended consequence. But this is why what we're doing as well. I think there's a bit of a balance there as well.
I wouldn't even say
we haven't been.
facilitating. It's a byproduct. You're right. I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's a
maybe they're not
byproduct, so they're not
actively
facilitating.
facilitating.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
But again, I do think, and I agree that in the UK, for example, I think America is also quite similar. But the UK, there is this definite problem. Like the second I started speaking about Islam and I identify as somebody left-leaning, my DMs were flooded with far-right Tommy Robinson types who were trying to kind of get me on their platforms because they had they kind of narrowed in, got their target. They're like, cool, this girl is one of them. She speaks about it. Let's get her on our side. And I'm stuck here in the UK trying to speak.
I get it.
Say my point of view. And I'm stuck between the wokists and the far right. And I'm kind of just,
But Nuria, don't you think that we...
in the same position.
But Nuria, don't you think that we're creating our own niche as well? That despite of multiple olive branches given to us by far right, whether that's far right Hindutva or far right white supremacists, we we reject it, but we still are building our own audience, and we got to have faith. Yes, it's smaller than the far right and smaller than the far left Wokistanis. It's smaller than both of them. And from a careers point of view, and that's why we see some sellouts like Amna Sadar and Yasmin Muhammad, etc. They get in bed with Hindutva crowd or whatever, and we see that. But isn't that a good thing that we're creating our own niche and we're sticking to our guns and we're saying, no, we're going to keep condemning the hijab, but at the same time, we're not going to pander into the hands of the far right, whether they're Hindutva or Western far
For sure, yeah, because you're true to your, yeah, exactly, because you can sleep at night and you think you're on the right side and you're not falling into the hands of that bigotry, which is what
so that's fine. I reckon that's fine, but I think we agree on one thing, that it's not, they're not facilitating it. It's just ended up being a byproduct. But again, from their point of view, they're
actively trying to look for our voices either. That's what
they are. Yeah, but they're trying to keep a balance. Okay, they're trying to keep a balance. So I understand their conundrum as well. But anyway, thank you for coming, Deep Dub.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very interesting chat.
Just a second. Like this was. Can I do I have a minute?
Yeah.
Sure.
So this is, by the way, what my last question was going to be about. Yeah, you talked about this little niche that you guys are building. This was what my last question was going to be about. What do you see? Like, what do you think? How will this movement pan out in 5-10 years? Do you think we can reform Islam? Do you think we can roll enough Christians and Hindus and other people to like
atheism,
just come out of their fanaticism? Sorry,
pull them out of religion, basically.
Yeah.
As I said, I quoted the numbers. I'm very hopeful. This number is going to keep increasing. Some very optimistic estimates suggest that even by 2050, the number might jump up to 30% agnostic and atheists in the world by 2050, which is only 30 years away.
How would answer that about the situation in UK? How does she see the situation in UK in like 10 years?
To be honest, if you ask me about the world over, I'm inclined to give a more positive answer.
Exactly. You know why I'm specifically asking about UK.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen what our Dawa community is like. It's going to take years to undo this damage. Where do we begin? But yeah, because the UK is very much like there are communities within communities, and they're pockets of breeding grounds for that same mentality, and that they're not assimilating in the way that we would want somebody in a first world country to have assimilated by now. I think the UK needs to really, really up its game and like look inwardly, because the rate that things are moving right now, and the segregation of communities and the radicalization. I mean, look at so many of the attacks that we see around the world. So many of those people had links and contacts to the UK. So many of them are born and bred here. And they're radicalized, and they could be at uni with you, they could be at school with you, but online, their mosques are, the lectures that they hear on Friday, that all of this stuff, and their whatever's happening in their personal lives, or the reinforcement from the community, all of this is lending towards a very extremist mentality. And there's certain parts of England where, I don't know about you, but I definitely just would not tread, and that's saying something.
We got to wrap it up. Sorry, we got to wrap it.
I'm saying, who would you blame for all of this mess, this segregation, and the anti-state feeling, and just this show of power in one way or the other? Who would you blame this mess for? Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think the British state should have done more on its part, or do you think the English society should have done more on their part to integrate people better? Do you think British state should have imposed British values, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, look, I think, right? Yeah, I do. I think the state is both complicit and it's obviously at fault as well. Like these things that like Priti Patel in the Home Office with the default starting position of this hostile environment they've created when refugees come and they're dying because they're trying to cross from Calais to the UK, and a lot of those are like Syrian refugees, Afghani refugees. This builds this sentiment of this anti-West sentiment anyway. But again, yes, you're right. I think France has done a much better example now when they're trying to say
Exactly.
anybody who comes, you need to live in these diverse settlements. You need to assimilate. You need to have neighbors from different countries. You need to go to school with people from all around the globe. You can't just have your pockets of, you know, extreme immigrant populations. That really like reinforces the problem. But it's a really big question. There's a lot of factors. I would love to write an essay on that.
Ah, we
But you
gotta.
get what I'm
guys,
saying, yeah?
I leave.
Thank
Alright,
you.
guys.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you so
your
much for having me.
input. Thank you. No
Thank you.
worries.
Thank you, Nuria. Thank you, Harris.
Thank you so much.
All right.
If you like these videos and want to support me in my activism, then you can support me on Patreon or PayPal. Stay free, everyone.